In a fantastical realm, a youthful individual named El resides, a place where a divine patrons bestow upon every inhabitant a unique cloud as a sacred gift. This assigned class predetermines their adult profession and is unveiled to them upon reaching their 10th birthday. Today marks a significant occasion for Er, as he has just celebrated his 10th birthday and is due to receive his designated class. His family, including his parents and sister, are eagerly anticipating this event. While his family speculates about the impressive class Er might acquire, he appears rather indifferent to the whole tradition. Even after their morning meal, following breakfast, he promptly head to the local temple, where a clergyman is positioned by an altar, engaging in the ritualistic touching of young malas. This practice, seemingly ubiquitous across various realms, involves the priest informing a child of their destined classification. As some children are designated as blacksmiths, and others as chiefly, Carol's sister informs him that this classification, they are often shaped by their parents' own classes, suggesting he is likely to receive an exceptional one when his turn arrives. As he approaches the priest, a buzz of excited whispers spreads through the assembled crowd. They speculate about the extraordinary class this child may inherit, given his mother is a renowned sword saint, and his father an archmage. The priest, himself eager for the ritual, places his hand on Erl's forehead. To his bewilderment, nothing occurs. He then gazes at Erl with sympathy, revealing that the boy was born without any class designation. Several days later, Erl's parents attempted to cheer him up by reassuring him that the didn't contain some with employment and thought players at the entire hall. However, use the place there particularly. He informs his family that he isn't feeling dowa, asserting that he has diligently pursued the discipline of swordsmanship. From a young age, he has consistently refined his abilities, day after day, and naturally, while having the swordsman class would have significantly expedited his progress, he believes he can still forge his path in the world without it. Given the extensive and rigorous training he has undertaken with his exceptionally powerful motor, his family feels a sense of relief as he then departs to seek solitude. Upon hearing a commotion emanating from the training ground, he observes two individuals engaged in a sparring match. Despite their seemingly rudimentary techniques, merely possessing the swordsman class appears sufficient to render them competent combatants. Spotting or observing them, he inquired about his presence. Carol responded that he arrived to train. There's a legit laughter from them, as the answered. Have someone without a class, so never content with a true swordsman, proceeding to showcase their skills. As the clumsily strict at each other with clear blades, El remains unimpressed. He then challenges them to aspar, the boys, believing Carol to be Justin, nonetheless accept the contest. Before their bout commenced, one of the boys questions Er about his position of divine protection. As a figure distinct from classes, everyone is inherently endowed with divine protection, from birth, functioning as a protective shield against injury, though it is not inexhaustible. It can also be shattered by an opponent of superior strength. Errol confirmed he possesses this protection, signaling to the boy that he can now fight without restraint. Relieved of the concern of fatally harming him, Yarn, however, declares that he requires no divine figure to overcome mere youngsters like him. This infuriates the boy who charges at Yarn, delivering a powerful sword swing. Errol effortlessly deflects the assault, astonishing the young man, who then begins to flail his sword erratically. Yet, Errol successfully blocks and parries every subsequent strike, causing the boy to grow increasingly desperate. His companion then attempts to intervene from behind to subdue Errol, but Errol's swiftness allows him to evade the attack just in time. He quickly discerns that these boys are no match for him compared to his mother, concluding that a two-on-one scenario make offer a more engaging challenge. With this token, he charges them, incapacitating one boy with a pommel straight to the chin, while the other stumbles. Having tripped over his fallen comrade, the second boy also goes down, and both begin to whine about the injustice of it all. As they complain like poor sport, a red-haired boy abruptly steps into the arena, commanding the two idiots to silence themselves. High School's team, Statin, had on a real battlefield, they would already be the season. Yarn, however, does not recognize this newcomer. Yep, the red-haired boy appears to know air, approaching him directly and issuing a challenge to a duel. He asserts that Earl's victory over the two chumps was solely due to some inherent talent inherited from his mother. The Sword Saint, adding, had as a classless individual, Earl Crown never truly compete against someone possessing both a class and fundamental training. The red-haired boy eventually reveals his identity as the son of Captain Evans, who commands the village guards. Earl suddenly recalls Captain Evans from an occasion when the captain saw his mother as assistant, but the boy bears no resemblance whatsoever to the robust man he remembered. The boy then laments how Earl's mother is consistently regarded as the most powerful, despite his own father being an accomplished swordsman. Therefore, to definitively prove which family is superior, he intends to vanquish Earl in a battle. Both combatants assume their stances, and the contest officially begins. The red-haired boy instantly launches an aggressive assault, aiming to deliver a decisive strike without delay. But Earl, having trained extensively with his mother, possesses a formidable defense. Their agility is remarkable as they move swiftly across the training area. Their exchange of blows leaves the two previously defeated youths astonished on the ground. Earl observes that while the red-haired boy is considerably more potent than the other two idiots, his reliance on rage in combat is causing him to make errors. Earl attempts to identify a vulnerability before attacking, but the red-haired boy anticipates this, countering with his distinctive aerial slashes. Earl successfully deflects one strike, but another connects with his chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. Startled, Earl questions the nature of the move, but the red-haired Yotsu asserts it's a genuine skill. A skill that someone as unranked and inept as Earl could never master. Days later, Aaron, still reeling from the defeat, finds a renewed determination within himself. Armed with his sword, he retreats into the wood, diligently practicing against a training dummy. Following numerous attempts, Dottie successfully reproduces the dual slash technique that had previously bested him. However, before he could suffer his achievement, a goblin springs from the foliage, ambushing him. The creature proves no match, as Earl swiftly pivots and unleashes his twin slash. This attack instantly fells the goblin. He revels in the mastery of his new technique, but his excitement is cut short when the thunderous roar echoes from the forest's depths, rattling Earl to his very core. His immediate instinct is to flee back to the village, to warn the guardi. Yet, a boy's cry for help reaches his ears, causing him to halt abruptly. Understanding the boy is likely in pain and that the guards would arrive too late, he resolves to venture deeper into the forest alone. He approaches cautiously for a short distance until he discovers an injured boy, who is none other than the familiar red-haired Yoto. That one who had bested him during their training session. The boy appears severely battered, blood-staining his entire body. Clutching his sword, whacking a colossal hobgoblin, a creature Earl had only heard of, never witnessed in person. As if monsters rarely approach the village, Earl debated whether to seek assistance, unsure if he possesses the strength to overcome the beast. However, he quickly understands that abandoning the red-haired boy would seal his fate. Earl makes a swift decision, stealthily positioning himself behind the hobgoblin. Just as the monstrous creature was about to deliver the final blow, to the red-haired boy, Earl unleashed a powerful twin strike, slitting through the hobgoblin, killing it instantly. The boy is stunned to see the hobgoblin leaflets on the ground, but even more so. Dottie is astonished that Errol could execute an attack he himself had taken years of rigorous training to master, and which was enhanced by his class. Errol offers the boy some holy weapon for his wounds. Immediately afterward, the boy inquires how Errol accomplished such a feat. Errol explained that his technique is dependent on having a specific class, clarifying that anyone with sufficient skill, agility, and strength can reproduce it. He details that after his initial defeat by the boy as twin slashes, Errol meticulously analyzed the move and practiced relentlessly to grasp its fundamental principles. Consequently, he can now adapt the attack as he sees fit. Still skeptical, the boy challenged Errol to a duel, which Errol readily accepted. They faced each other, simultaneously unleashing their respective abilities. To the boy's astonishment, Errol not only parried his strike but also incorporated a third, unexpected slash. The two connected, sending the boy to the ground. The captain as soon as enraged, but Errol clarified that he is not confined by the limitations of any specific skill, stating that his only boundaries are his own power and proficiency, implying he can execute as many slashes as he desires. Provided he is skilled enough. The boy is entering against in a swift skirmish, but once more, he is struck by the third slash. His team, the blow is even more potent than before, filling him again as Errol declares victory and departs. Half a decade later, Errol resolves to embark on a journey to Brescia, a kingdom renowned for its exceptional swordsmanship, where both his mounted and Captain Evans received their training. Errol aspires to achieve the same pinnacle of skill. On his travels, he is joined by several unfamiliar companions. Among them are two highly skilled swordsmen, a man of the barbarian class, and a woman celebrated for her dual-wielding prowess. Both also seek to refine their abilities in Brescia, but their personalities clash, leading to constant bickering. The card driver urges them to calm down, reminding them they share the same destination. However, the man, a blatant misogynist, insists on sending the woman back to the kitchen. Before their argument can escalate further, the car driver yells at them to prepare their weapons. As trouble is brewing, Errol calmly gazes upward, spotting a horde of horse with the same surface. These creatures are obstructing their path, clearly intending to leave no survivors. Two children in the chart become terrified and plead with the barbarian man for rescue. But the barbarian, despite his class, professed to be utterly selfish and cowardly, declaring he wants to risk his life for others. He then leaps from the chart and flees. The woman follows suit, asserting that everyone must fend for themselves in this world. The car driver grows anxious, questioning if he can outpace the horde with his vehicle and its remaining occupants. But before he can act, Errol silently dismounts the child and advances towards the monster. The driver implores him to retreat and save himself, but Errol disregards the warning, looking at the first arc and piercing its hair. The driver is astounded by Errol's astonishing speed and precision. Errol then employs a technique akin to instant transmission, vanishing and reappearing before the horse, systematically eliminating them. Regrettably, he soon finds himself encircled by horse, rendering his dashing ability ineffective. However, to the driver's astonishment, Errol executes a legendary maneuver called the Blind Dance, rotating wildly. That a technique that simultaneously fails all surrounding view. The car driver is bewildered, unable to comprehend how Errol can wield such a skill. This class is exclusively wielded by female swordsmen, specifically those of the Sword Princess lineage. Errol, however, disregards traditional gender roles, aspiring to be a member of the LGBT community. Consequently, he sprints towards the ORC ladder, deftly avoiding its assault, then springs onto its back. Plunging his sword deep into the orc's skull, he instantly slices it before turning back to the astonished driver. He then instructs the driver to resume their journey to Bessie. When a child inquires about his class, he plainly stated he possesses none. This revelation utterly astounds everyone present. Hudson recalls an incident 5 years prior, when he demonstrated to his mother Dota newly acquired twin blade technique. Initially, she believed she was hallucinating, but Errol clarified that he was practicing to mimic a skill he observed. Overjoyed, she vowed to impart all her knowledge of skills to him. Utilized by the Sword Princess class. Back in the present, the driver rushes him, announcing their arrival in Brescia. This city, renowned as the land of swords, Errol disembarks from the car, observing the town center teeming with individual, each bearing a sword at their waist. Errol then fetches the driver, inquiring if he possesses advanced swordsman capabilities. Initially, the driver asserts he is merely a cart operator. However, Errol realizes that only a highly skilled swordsman could have recognized the maneuver she performed. Instantly, the car driver confesses to belonging to the Holy Knight class, acknowledging it as a rather formidable designation. Yet, he grew weary of constant combat, thus he occasionally prefers to unwind and pose as an ordinary driver. The Holy Knight, recognizing this is Lycol Errol's inaugural visit to the city, informs him that he must first secure membership in a guild, as participation in a tournament is impossible without on. In this particular city, engaging in combat and emerging victorious in competition serves as the primary method for swordsmen to demonstrate their prowess. Than a true wealth. Errol responds that financial gain holds no interest for him. His sole desire is to engage in battle. The most formidable swordsman this local presents, the driver cautions him to beware of predatory corporate guilds, as they possess the capacity to utterly deplete on a spirit. Man not beneficially. With that warning, the driver turns and departs, while Errol proceeds into the urban area. He observes various individuals promoting their guild, recruiting new members, and swordsmen queuing up to seek their fortune with more prestigious guilds. En route, he inadvertently collides with a blonde young girl, who instantly clings to him tenaciously. She informs him that she has no almond and got and fast and alles good is fun. Kalau immediately realizes the suspicion. Given her apparent desperation for recruiter, he declines. Nevertheless, the young girl persists, refusing to leave him be. She repeatedly importunes him to join their guild, but Aaron, steadfast in his refusal, remains unswayed. He inquires about the most powerful guild in the area, and she reluctantly concedes that the Shadowblade Guild is among the strongest. Currently, boasting a distinct class of swordsmen, he requests directions from her and promptly heads towards the guild. En route, a guard intercepts him, directing him to the reception area for the required test. Within the reception hall, he discovers a lengthy queue of aspiring swordsmen eager to treat their fortune at joining the renowned guild, as a cat also invigorates Errol. He ponders what caliber of formidable opponents he might face. However, when his opportunity to register arrives, the receptionist scoffs at him, labeling him a classless failure, and asserts that only individuals possessing an advanced swordsman class are eligible to apply for the guild trial. Errol insists he is confident he can pass their assessment. Nevertheless, the receptionist declines to register him. Disheartened, he resolves to depart, but then notices three high-ranking swordsmen entering the hall, who are instantly greeted with a celebrity-like fanfare. However, pays little heed to such theatrics. He promptly redirects his attention to other guilds, but on after another, he faces rejection from each due to his lack of a designated class. Exhausted, he re-enters the city, retrieving a letter his mother had given him, which instructed him to locate her former guild. Louisville would undoubtedly assist him. He must say whether his mother had foreseen the extent of the difficulty he would encounter. Yet, He remains grateful. However, before he can even fully read the letter, the persistent blonde girl once again latches onto him. She asserts that they are still willing to accept him, but Errol reiterates his refusal. She then literally begins pleading with him to join the guild, imploring him to consider it an act of charity. She gestures towards an impressive guild house, declaring it to be her own. This revelation slightly astonishes Errol, but the young girl explains that their guild, known as the Dragon Fang, was once the nation as famous for an extended period, but has recently fallen into disarray and is currently the weakest. However, she intends to restore it to its past eminence. The name Dragon Fang suddenly resonates with him as he recalls his mother once mentioning the leader of her guild, a dual-wielding swordsman, who had named the guild Dragon Fang after his signature technique. He swiftly retrieves the letter to verify the name, confirming that it is, in fact, the very guild his mother had spoken of. He agrees to accompany her inside, which delights her immensely, yet, the instant they step into the room, he discovers an elderly, unarmed, inebriated man slumped on a couch. The man gruffly instructs Errol to seek another location, declaring the guild as fatal. Then departs. Meanwhile, the young girl reveals that the man is her father. He was once recognized as the Khaleesi's second finest swordsman, but since the loss of his arm, he has been irrevocably altered. Errol, however, astonishes her by expressing his desire to enlist with the guild, a declaration that brings immense joy to the young girl. She swiftly drew up an agreement, which Errol completed and returned for her review. Before long, she inquired why he had left the class field blank, to which Errol responded that he possessed no clue. The young girl, exasperated, drew a sword, declaring she had assumed he was an advanced swordsman due to his elusive demeanor. Her words were cut short as the door swung open, revealing a striking red-haired woman named Ray Woo stepped inside. The lolly immediately raced to Ray, carefully accusing the classless imbecile of tricking her into guild membership. Ray's attention was instantly captured, and she turned to Errol, expressing her surprise at encountering him in this place. A bewildered Errol questioned how she recognized him, prompting a surprised Ray to reveal their shared village origin. She added that they had trained together, but he still didn't jog his memory until he suddenly realized that the red-haired boy he had frequently sparred with was in fact again the lolly, familiar with detail, then inquired of Ray if this was indeed the classless individual who had defeated her in their youth, a story she had always dismissed as mere legend. Ray, however, remained fixated on her past defeat and promptly challenged Errol to a duel, which commenced without delay. Ray instantly unleashed a twin-slash attack. Errol anticipated countering it, but to his astonishment, her strikes effortlessly bypassed his defenses and landed directly on his chest, perplexing him until Ray disclosed her affiliation with the Power Swordsman class. This specialization allowed her to wield a sword 5 times the weight of a standard owner, granting her 5-fold power in each strike. Errol was particularly impressed that she had managed to maintain her agility, despite wielding such a heavy blade. However, he deemed her speed insignificant compared to his own during her subsequent assault. He generated an afterimage to divert Ray's attention, then materialized behind her to strike her back. A bewildered Ray attempted the maneuver again, but with identical result. She found it incredible that Errol employed a technique typically reserved for the most elite swordsmen. Meanwhile, Errol recognized her formidable durability, making her difficult to defeat. Using conventional attacks, Ray, aware of this, attempted to conclude the battle with her powerful strikes, but Errol deployed his mother as distinctive countermove, which brought Ray to her chaos, instantly concluding the skirmish. Consequently, the lolly's entire disposition shifted dramatically. She then welcomed him to their guild, informing him of their current financial situation and the NATO clear their substantial debate. To achieve this, they would be required to participate in tournaments as a trio, competing against other guilds fielding full 5-member teams. Errol, nonetheless, was thrilled by the prospect of fighting formidable adversaries and eagerly anticipated the chase to further refine his ability. The following morning, Errol awoke in his newly assigned room in a fresh bed, which was no his. It took him a moment to fully recall the event that had transpired since his arrival. He was now a member of the semi-renowned guild his mother had once been associated with, a fact of great significance to him. Consequently, he resolved not to disappoint him and to restore the guild to its former glory. He then prepared himself and proceeded to the living room, where the Lolly and Ray were already awake, conversing with the Fireflies about the impending tournament. The Lolly promptly drew Aaron into their discussion, announcing that the tournament was scheduled to begin the following week, and with their roster now expanded to 3 members from 2. They were now eligible to participate. She warned Aaron that the competition would be exceptionally challenging, given its elimination format featuring one-on-one duels, and the likelihood of opposing guilds fielding full 5-person teams. They would face a significant handicap. Therefore, each of them would need to overcome multiple adversaries to even advance past the initial round. The Lolly, however, maintained a cheerful outlook, asserting that their situation should still be manageable, as their guild already boasted 2 ranked swordsmen. Thus, provided they avoided encountering an unranked swordsman, they anticipated being evenly matched in their encounters. Errol, somewhat unfamiliar with the ranking system, inquired about their precise meaning. The Lolly clarified that there were 5 distinct ranks in total, ranging from A to D, were assigned the highest possible attainment. She mentioned that among all swordsmen in Brescia, a mere 20 were recognized as a rank, whereas other ranks signified a complete novice, someone who merely understood how to grip a sword. Satan proudly stated that both she and Ray held the distinction of being B-ranked swordsmen, and given Errol as decisive victory over Ray. This implied he too was a B-ranked swordsman, with 3 B-ranked swordsmen now in their ranks. He ought to stand a fair chance in the initial rounds, at the very least. With that said, the Lolly departed for the kitchen, leaving Errol absorbed in his reflections. However, as Ray began to exit, he detained her, inquiring about her capabilities as a power swordsman. Though still seemingly irked by her previous day's defeat, she responded that one of her skills involved solidifying her external mana shield to defend against most weaker assaults. Errol pondered for a moment, contemplating how he might acquire such a valuable technique himself. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He instructed Ray to strike him with her sword seam in its sheath, but Ray expressed disinterest. Undeterred, Errol grasped her hand, imploring her to comply. Ray, however, appeared to misinterpret his intentions, suspecting he harbored some peculiar fetish, yet she was entirely averse to the notion, suggesting they perhaps begin with a more conventional approach. Errol, disregarding the body in front of him, recognized their differing interpretation and clarified that his request was for her to strike him, so he could learn to master the technique of hardening his mana protection shield, which he believed would be supremely effective when confronting numerous adversaries, as the probability of sustaining injury is significantly higher in such scenario. Her reaction is one of astonishment. She then inquires if he has lost his mind, given that abilities are exclusively bestowed by the goddess is divine favor, and are not acquired through study. However, Aaron, having embraced atheism, shortly instructs her to keep speaking. He asserted that he has already mastered techniques such as twin blade switch and instant transmission, effectively silencing Ray. Ray, conceding, agrees to test his claim once they arrive at the training grounds, where she presents him with her weapon. She cautions him that her sword weighs 5 times more than a standard blade, and without the brute strength ability, Errol would be incapable of wielding it. Yet not correction such the wall was drawing it from its scabbard and swinging it with remarkable fluidity and effortlessness, leaving Ray utterly dumbfounded once more. She questions how he manages such feats, despite lacking a cloud and a discernible ability. Errol responds that his knowledge and capabilities were acquired through unwavering dedication and consistent daily practice. He pledges to equal their innate talent through sheer diligence and exertia, which profoundly impacts Ray. She offers an apology for her previous remarks before retrieving her sword and consenting to commence the training. However, she warns him that she will not restrain herself. Errol assents and attempts to flee, but the opportune moment has already elapsed, and the formidable woman then strikes him across the face with her shattered blade. A short time afterward, the young girl rushes into the training area, appearing breathless and agitated, to inform Errol and Ray that she has discovered their opposing guild, and the revelation is far from positive. She discloses that their adversaries are none other than the elite guild, Black Blood, which boasts more than 8 swordsmen. Their leader, Gio, is renowned for his viper-like ruthlessness. Nevertheless, the young girl shows no inclination to retreat, and with an impassioned declaration, she asserts that they will exert every effort to overcome their rivals. Her gaze then falls upon Aaron, who is prone on the ground, having been thoroughly pummeled by Ray during their practice session. The young girl inquires if Errol has pressure, but Ray responds that they are merely engaged in a unique training regimen. However, the lolly suspects that Ray is simply releasing her frustration upon the newcomer. Errol eventually resists, declaring his hunger after enduring such a beating and expressing a desire for sustenance. A week swiftly passes amidst their training. Ultimately, the day of the contest dawns, with individuals from across the nations convening at the Colosseum to discuss the impending match. Errol is utterly astonished by the sheer scale of the arena, while the lolly overhears spectators asserting that the Dragonfang's guild had utterly failed, igniting her fury, though Gray successfully intervenes to restrain her. Errol discerns that wagering occurs here, with individuals placing bets on prospective winning team. The lolly informs him that, at present, the odds for their upcoming bout stand at 20-1. Errol remarks that this is quite remarkable, but the lolly vehemently tells him to be silent, as it signifies that not a single person in the entire metropolis has faith in their ability to triumph over the Black Bloody Guild. However, this situation could also prove to be a hidden advantage, for if they succeed in winning, they stand to gain a substantial fortune from just one contest. Ray attempts to solve the hair, but the lolly is beyond placation. Her is ablaze with determination. She asserts that victory in this match is imperative, for the fate would spell the end of their guild, and to ensure their immense wealth post-match, she has unilaterally pledged the guild house as collateral. Thus, a victory would irrevocably transform their lives, and no one would ever again label them as a once great but no super guild. Ray, however, questions the consequences of a loss. The young girl retorts that it is inconsequential, as a defeat would have resulted in the loss of everything regardless. Abruptly, she is addressed by an individual who is revealed to be Gio, the formidable leader of the Black Bloody Guild. He proceeds to disparage the young girl and clarify that he orchestrated events to ensure that the inaugural match would be contested between their respective guilds, predicting an effortless victory that is assuredly theirs. Furthermore, he added, she can utterly extinguish the final vestige of a guild that was once considered paramount. He reassures her not to be concerned, for if she were to achieve victory, it would undeniably signify that her guild is superior. However, he quickly realizes that contested dengan angkuan respective keswords. An improbable figure percent across the year 2020. he dismisses the possibility, then chuckles at his own cleverness, before wishing them good fortune and departing. Shortly thereafter, Ray stepped into the arena. Within, Errol observes that Gio himself does not appear to be participating in the combat and ponders if this absence might enhance their prospects of victory. Ray, however, informs him that it is irrelevant, as their entire opposing team consists of ranked combatants. Moreover, their current formation appears to be unusually aggressive. At last, the moment for confrontation arrives. The unknown sergeant introduces the participants. From the black-blooded side, a grand hired youth, identified as Avenger, steps forward. He boldly proclaims his intentions to vanquish the entire opposing squad, while the commentator expresses surprise upon observing that, from the Dragonfans contingent, Harold, the swordsman without eclat, is slated to fight. The Venture Boy appears unimpressed, reasoning that the speed of his victory over A-class simpleton is irrelevant, but resolves to project regardless. This way, he can then face the female combatant. The match commences, and within moments, the Venture lunges forward, piercing a roll through the chest and astonishing all present with his swiftness. While the lolly becomes distressed for Aaron, Ray instructs her to observe closely, revealing that it was merely Errol as afterimage. The Venture appears taken aback, yet this doesn't deter him. He pivots and attacks Osmore, only to encounter another illusory duplicate. He quickly grasped that this encounter won't conclude as rapidly as he anticipated, finding himself enveloped by a multitude of ROS phantom images. This, however, holds no sway over him, as he intends to leverage his exceptional speed to strike down every single one of them. At that very moment, all the afterimages launch a simultaneous assault. The Venture swiftly shoots through the active illusion. Will you back impact the detail arrow? Was the Venture turning back at him? This particular feat is widely regarded as incredibly challenging. The Venture tumbles to the ground, and the match concludes abruptly. Arrow then boasted that his mother would routinely practice with him, employing 5 illusions simultaneously, and even that was her holding back. The commentator expresses utter shock as the crowd erupts in thunderous applause for the seemingly unranked combatant. He comes to the realization that even though he attempted the identical technique as the Venture Boy, his own execution lacked the same level of refinement, indicating a need for even more dedicated practice. Errol as subsequent match pits him against a formidable dual wielder. This opponent relentlessly presses the attack with an unyielding barrage of sword strikes, but Errol skillfully manages to deflect every single one, before unleashing his signature twin slash attack to incapacitate his adversary. With 2 opponents now defeated, the next challenger he encounters professes to be a reverse grip dagger specialist, demonstrating greater caution and his footwork, and integrating a variety of martial arts techniques. Alongside his weaponry, this proved ineffective, as Errol's superior spike allowed him to disorient his foe with a flurry of afterimages, before delivering a decisive blow from behind. Ray and Lolly are both utterly astonished by the fact that this individual has just vanquished 3 ranked swordsmen, without even breaking a sweat and in record time. A performance that genuinely ignites Wally's hope of ultimately securing victory in the tournament. The subsequent match proves to be considerably more challenging, as he is pitted against the formidable shield swordsmen, who are widely recognized for their resilience. And since Errol finds himself unable to land uncritical blows, he is compelled to constantly maneuver, slowly eroding his opponent's protective capabilities. Bit by bit, his opponent shoots at him, asserting that he cannot possibly be a classless individual. But Errol calmly retorts that everything he has achieved is solely the product of sheer hard work and nothing more. The brute dismisses this, telling him that diligent effort alone won't get him very far. When pitted against natural talent, as he charges forward, unleashing his shot bash skill, Errol, However, skillfully employs one of his motor as signature techniques for a second, accurately predicting his enemy's movement, and successfully kicks the shield away. Immediately after, he employs a technique he learned from his previous opponent, the martial arts specialist, delivering a powerful kick to the brute's stomach. Errol then picks up the fallen shield and begins to advance. The brute, no rugged, attempts to counter-attack, but Errol skillfully parries the blow before dashing forward and utilizing the brute's own shot burst technique to decisively defeat his opponent. The crowd begins to riot, accusing him of being alien who is concealing his true rank and class. In response, the organizers retrieve his class ID and present it to the Magic Crystal Ball, broadcasting live to everyone that he is, unequivocally, a classless individual. With that clarification settled, the next opponent is announced, and this swordsman appears, to be of a different caliber. His name is Masamune. He is revealed to be of samurai lineage from the East, wielding a curved sword known as a katana, even before Masamune draws his blood. Errol senses an immediate danger and readies himself, understanding that this particular fight will not be as effortless as the previous one. He realizes that Masamune is preparing to release his ultimate skill, waiting to strike like a child's naki. Yeah, Errol's curiosity gets the better of him, so he deliberately moves forward, placing himself in immediate danger. The moment he enters the swordsman's striking range, Masamune swiftly unsheathes his sword and lunges towards Errol. But somehow Errol proves even faster, vanishing and reappearing behind him. Masamune is visibly shocked, but Errol informs him that he is genuinely the fastest person he has ever witnessed in the city. Unfortunately for Masamune, Errol's own mother was significantly quicker, so he is quite accustomed to such speed. With that declaration, he unleashes the Sword Princess's ultimate skill, stabbing his enemy multiple times, decisively defeating him. With that, everyone is shocked into stunned silence as the supposed weakest member of the weakest guild has just effortlessly swept aside the strongest members of the strongest guild. Errol then walks off towards Ray and Lolly, feeling a sense of contentment that they should have now amassed enough funds to ensure the guild's continued operation. That evening, upon their return to the guild house, they immediately began celebrating with drinks flowing freely. Errol remained surprised by the fact that Lolly was old and no good to consume alcohol, but she insisted that she was a grown woman. Even if she appeared somewhat diminutive, she still couldn't quite believe that Errol had single-handedly defeated five ranked swordsmen from the country's top guild, all by himself. She then resolves that she must attempt to woo him, seeing him as her golden ticket out of poverty and obscurity. She attempts to propose a marriage, claiming she can fulfill all his desires. But Errol, a true Sigma, rejects her proposition outright, stating that the world prefers someone more like Ray instead. This declaration immediately causes Ray to blush profusely as she springs up from her seat, yelling at Errol to stop saying such things just because he wants to reject Lol. However, Errol was genuinely considering his statement. He asks why she would assume he is making fun of her, and she replies by telling that when they were younger, he had challenged her among during a sword fight. She further claimed how everyone she has ever met has remarked on her apparent lack of womanly charms. But Errol can clearly see two very prominent womanly charms right there in front of him, and respectfully begs to differ. Lolly realizes that Ray has absolutely no comprehension of what her greatest strength truly is, nor how she should effectively utilize it. So she doesn't really need to concern herself with her. With that token, she begins to rub Errol's legs, claiming he must be exhausted from all the day's intense fighting, and then brazenly tells him to meet her in the bedroom. Ray immediately becomes embarrassed. Errol urged Lolly to chase her peculiar remarks, yet she responded with a cunning smile, asserting that she merely intended to provide him with a much-needed massage following his exhausting day. To her astonishment, however, Errol declared they preferred a massage from Ray, envisioning it as being thoroughly beaten by Ray. In the training area, while attempting to master the reinforcement magic Ray wields with success, due to her class and abilities, Lily observed from the balcony, pondering if Errol truly understood the actual meaning of a massage. The incessant commotion eventually roused Lolly as father, who descended to the training grounds, severely hungover. He grumbled about the noise, asserting he needed to vent their frustration over losing the tournament before it even started, especially in the dead of night. Lolly, nonetheless, informed him that they had actually triumphed in their match against the reigning top girl. This piqued his interest. Though they suspected the Black Blood Guild had likely deployed their B or C rank novices as expendable fodder. However, Lolly astonished him for their B revealing all their adversaries were a tier, and moreover, Errol had vanquished them single-handedly. This revelation jolted her Valjean out of his hangover as he gazed at the bruised and battered Errol, questioning as the young man was genuinely so powerful. Lolly then declared she had pledged numerous wagers, and since Errol had utterly defeated the opposing team, they had struck it rich. Now they were not only free of debt but also possessed sufficient funds to cover their operational expenses. Her father, conversely, remained less optimistic, contending that if, by some stroke of fortune, this youth proved to be truly formidable, he would inevitably be recruited by larger, more influential, and wealthier guild. Therefore, she should raise her expectations. Lolly dismissed his concerns, stating she would soon marry Errol, which would bind them for life. Errol promptly announced he had no intention of doing any such thing, but quickly shifted his focus to her father, remarking that while Lolly made best to burn from, at last she was a defeatist, well abandoned all hope. This was a direct insult aimed at Lolly as father, who glared at him menacingly. Errol, however, missed the implication and proceeded to suggest that her father should chase his self-pity and begin to at his age, given he still possessed only hand capable of wielding a sword. This remark infuriated her father, who instantly seized Errol by the collar, admonishing him to refrain from discussing topics he knew nothing about. He informed Errol that a dual-wielding swordsman unable to dual-wield was merely a waste of space. Errol countered that he disagreed, as he, a classless swordsman, was still actively competing and striving for advancement in this world. With that, her father shoved him aside and ascended the stair. Lolly and Ray promptly rushed to Errol as aid, inquiring about his well-being. Lolly apologized for her father's conduct, while simultaneously expressing gratitude to Errol for sparing his men. Errol asserted that despite losing his arm and being inactive for an extended period, her father remained remarkably powerful, and it was a pity he refused to utilize his immense strength and expertise he mused internally about the impressive techniques he could acquire from a dual-wielding swordsman, and vowed to himself that he would inspire Lolly as father, right to wield a sword once more. Lolly overheard his desire to master new abilities and proposed to explore some of the dungeons close to the city. Errol was entirely unaware of dungeons, so Ray clarified that dungeons were subterranean caverns, teeming with hundreds of monsters, and riddled with traps, making them prime locations for skill acquisition, and gaining practical combat experience, which would benefit them during the Sword God Show. Errol had no clue what she was referring to, so she elucidated that the city annually hosted a competition where the nation as most skilled swordsmen fought to demonstrate their prowess and establish themselves as the preeminent swordsmen in the land. Lolly promptly produced a frame and instructed Errol to complete it if he wished to partake. However, to Ray's dismay, he tore it up directly before them. Ray, bewildered, inquired if he had no desire to enter the competition, but Errol retorted that Lolly was attempting to trick him, presenting him with a marriage certificate to sign instead. Lolly chuckled, asserting she was merely gauging his reaction, but Errol was no longer in a compliant mood. He then applied a rare naked choke to teach her a lesson. The following morning, Errol awoke to discover Lolly attempting to attack him. But he evaded her, tied her to the bed, and departed. Later that day, he all journeyed towards the dungeons together, where Lolly elucidated that participants could stand on teleportation circles to instantly travel to their desired dungeon level. Though access was restricted to previously visited floors. Lolly mentioned she had reached level 12, while Ray had attained level 14. Errol promptly resolved to accompany Ray to the 14 level, but Lolly explained that this system didn't function like that. They needed to have been physically present on Tata to revisit it. This was disappointing, as Errol had intended to confront the most formidable monsters from the very beginning. However, Lolly reassured him, stating his signal a very quick path that would rapidly guide them to the deeper level. She consented to the proposal, but Lolly attempted to isolate Errol, suggesting Ray could proceed with her level 14 exploration since Errol wouldn't require two escorts, and begins pulling him away. But Errol, not easily swayed, requests Ray to join them. Upon entering the first level, they are instantly assailed by two armored knights, prompting Errol to unsheath his sword. He immediately engages one in combat, while Ray confronts the other, observing something unexpected. Despite their cumbersome armor, the knights exhibit remarkable agility, yet Ray finds them manageable. Employing his dash step, he severs the knight as yet, only to discover the armor is completely hollow. The dungeon Esmana animates the armor, causing the headless knight to resume its movement. Ray points out their lack of true vulnerability and inability to feel pain, prompting Errol to target their lower limbs. The strategy proves highly effective. As the enchanted knights crumble to the ground, Ray simultaneously dispatches his own adversary. Stating that the foes will quickly regenerate, Ray urges him to proceed. Before advancing, Errol inquires about Lolly's combat specialization. She proudly declares herself Avenger, offering to instruct him in any desired scheme, either on the training ground or intimately. Theron, however, rebels her advances once and continues forward. Just before reaching the second level, he discovers shots for assistance emanating from a nearby door. Upon closer inspection, he discovers a man, drenched in blood, kneeling on the ground and pleading for aid. Ray proposes bringing him to the surface, but the man declines, asserting that his companions remain with him. He explains his friends were severely injured by a booby trap, imploring them to assist in their rescue. Lolly, however, promptly shifts to a transactional approach. She requests payment for her assistance, and to her astonishment, the man provides a substantial amount from his recent gambling winnings. Theron, however, perceives an anomaly, trailing the man. He observes that after such a significant blood loss, one typically cannot evince united without holy water, much less track back to a prelude arena, he deduces that the blood and wounds are entirely fabricated. He opts to withhold this insight, believing it could potentially lead to something intriguing and entertaining. The man then guides them to a hidden chamber, where they discover a crimson trail, and a central pool containing a solitary gold coin. The glint of the coin instantly captivates Lolly. As she moves to retrieve it, the teleportation circle materializes beneath their feet. Ray comprehends that this was a deliberate trap. Meanwhile, the man smirks at them, boasting that he retrieved a hefty sum for such a simple task. However, to his astonishment, the magic circle transported him along with the other. He all materialized on a level unfamiliar event to Ray. This implies at least deeper than the 14th floor. Though no formidable adversaries are apparent yet, the individual who faked that injury was trembling with terror. He stammered, explaining that this particular area is reputed to be the Dungeon as the best level, where the legendary advanced sword god resides. Abruptly, a knight clad in rainbow enchanted armor materializes before them. Lolly, however, dismisses details of the sword god class, which were widely considered mere folklore. Aram, recognizing the gravity of their predicament, instantly shoves Lolly to the ground. As the sword god unleashes an aerial slash of such immense power that it shatters the dungeon wall. Without hesitation, the sword god then assaults Errol. Errol barely manages to raise his sword in defense, deflecting the blow even as he is propelled forcefully into the wall. He comprehended that his survival was solely attributable to the reinforcement magic training he retrieved from Rai. He attempts to counter-slash his adversary, but the knight, exceptionally swift, employs advanced maneuvers to retreat rapidly. Weak as Miller, he declared this to be an excellent chance to challenge his own abilities. This utterly astonishes his companions. She then utilizes the identical divine step technique to bridge the gap and press his assault, delivering a flurry of blows to the knight, which are parried. The knight is compelled to retreat but then activates a special ability. This skill causes the room's gravitational pull to intensify, pinning the opponent to the front. Yet Errol effortlessly sustains his footing. He had encountered this phenomenon previously during his youth, while training against his master, where he had exerted all his might, merely to remain upright. When his mother launched her assault at the this thing, James lances well. He employs the gold coin to negate the incoming attack, thereby generating a brief vulnerability, which Errol exploits to its maximum extent. Unleashing one of his most potent abilities, Infinite Brain, the knight fragmented into countless pieces following the assault. This astonishing feat leaves everyone in the chamber stunned. He then recuperates his figure with some holy water, after which J.L. securely depart the dungeon. Via a teleportation spell, Manuel, back at the tavern, Rod was once again imbibing when he chanced upon a conversation among three foolish youths discussing their successful deception of the Dragon Fang Guild as newest recruit into a snare and their improbable return. Rod approaches them and shatters their table with a solitary punch. He commands them to disclose all their knowledge, but George intervenes, labeling him a worthless drunkard. Rod instantly comprehended that George must have orchestrated this scheme, implying that his daughter's prospects of survival are exceedingly remote. Utterly devastated, he looks at George but is effortlessly cast acid as if he were a merry commoner. As he kneels on the floor, lamenting his inability to rescue his young daughter, a sudden voice from the doorway captures his focus. He turns to witness Lolly, accompanied by Aaron and Ray, entering the tavern, conversing about their intense hunger. Lolly spots her father and the unsightly George, but is taken aback when Rod embraces her fiercely, offering gratitude for his daughter's safety. Ray confronts Georgie, asserting that he obtained all the necessary details from his associate. Wu confessed that the entire system was George's brainchild, yet Georgie, in typical political fashion, flatly denies an involvement, maintaining that each individual is solely responsible for their own safety within the dungeons. And Errol considers this a valid argument. Rod warns George that they won't escape accountability, but George simply dismisses him as an inebriated individual. A worthless, spent individual then exits the room, leaving Errol to ponder what fresh deception she'll encounter next. This marks the conclusion of the video. Please remember to give a like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.